Welcome to the Language Room content channel, where today we will be discussing why don't we all speak the same language? Humans, as a heavily social species, have always found ways to communicate with each other. Communication is the root of all civilizations and runs in our blood. From ancient Roman texts to murals from the Egyptian Empire to English, how this very video is being communicated to you. Communication has always been essential for life, growth and evolution as a whole, and continues to be to this very day. The main way in which communication has taken place over history is of course through the use of languages. Languages are used by almost every single human being on the planet today, and they are not used lightly. The average person speaks about 16,000 words a day, although differing studies argue that this goes as low as 2,000 for some and as high as 30,000 for others. And with over 8 billion people living on the planet today, that makes for a whopping 128 trillion words being spoken across the world every single day. So it is safe to say that we communicate a lot. Some would even say that we have mastered the art. However, we don't exactly do it efficiently. If you were wanting to communicate with the entire world, this massive number now needs to be split up into the over 7,000 languages which are spoken across the world today. Even more so if you are counting every dialect which comes from a lot of these languages. With the average minimum time to learn the basics for a language being 16 weeks or 480 hours, you are going to be studying for a while before you are able to communicate effectively with even half of the world. Not ideal. The main way to cross this language barrier is through the use of high quality translations, but we will get to that part later. So why do we not all just speak one single language, you might ask? Well, the subject is actually quite complicated, and many have tried and failed in the past attempting to do just that. The most notable of these attempts is that of the language Esperanto. In 1887, a Polish physician by the name of Ludwik Zamenhof came up with the concept of Esperanto. His objective was to eliminate the communication barriers between countries and ethnic groups by creating a universal, neutral language which could act as a middle ground for all. In this way, he envisioned that every person in the world would be able to communicate with each other through this one common language. Zamenhof grew up in Poland, and in his youth came across many different languages. His family spoke Polish and Yiddish, the country's official language was Russian, and his neighbours were Lithuanians and German speakers. With this, he saw firsthand how frustrating it could be when two people cannot communicate with each other, and he set out to find a solution for this once and for all. He initially thought of reviving Latin or Classic Greek, but quickly realised these were far too complicated to be put in place internationally, due to their complex nature and difficulty to learn. Therefore, he went back to the drawing board and came up with a new solution, an entirely new language. In 1887, he officially introduced his artificial language, Esperanto. It was primarily influenced by Romance and Slavic languages and was made to be easy to pronounce, understand and learn. He created the language so it had no irregular verbs, phonetic spelling and simplistic grammar. In this way, he hoped that as many people as possible would be able to pick it up with ease. Once announced, the language had mixed responses, with some seeing an ulterior motive and banning the language entirely, such as Adolf Hitler, who saw it as a Jewish tool of evil, as well as Russian leaders. But on the grand scheme of things, the response was positive. People started learning Esperanto. Some claimed to have learnt the language in just a few hours. Original Esperanto works started popping up, and some of the biggest pieces of literature were translated into the lexicon, such as the Old Testament and Hamlet by Shakespeare. Asian countries also liked the idea, as they needed a common language to communicate between themselves. But many did not like English and the Western influences which came with it. The language appeared in academic papers, conventions were held, and more books appeared. It is said that at one point 2 to 5 million people studied or spoke Esperanto. So it was going well, but did its success continue? Well, not really. Interest in the language peaked in the 1970s, but after that its growth came to a near halt. The language lost its appeal, scholars moved on, and although there was talk of making it an official language of the European Union, this is yet to happen. Esperanto, as big as its visions were, never came to flourish as a global language. So why did it fail? And why has no other language worked either? Well, the truth is, it is a very complicated matter. As good as the Esperanto lexicon was, and as logical the concept, it just isn't practical in real life. The language was no one's mother tongue, and no one knew of it before it suddenly came about in 1887. Languages in general, no matter how simple, take a lot of time and effort to learn, especially if not learnt at a young age. And with no one else speaking it at the time, it was extremely difficult to get anyone interested at all. It would have taken maybe hundreds of millions of people learning it until it would become even slightly relevant. But at the rate it was growing, even at its peak, finding other speakers outside of conventions was near impossible. This meant that people were simply not interested in learning the language, and preferred to stick to their mother tongue, or other already well-established languages with entire countries of native speakers. That said, one language has become very close to achieving the goal of a universal language. English, with its facility to learn and understand and widespread use across the world, is easily the closest thing that has ever come to a common language. With over 2 billion speakers globally, the United Kingdom's dominance during its empire, as well as America's business influence, has caused the language to be established in numerous countries, covering all regions from Australia to India to Canada. This widespread use of the language meant that English quickly became the top language in the world. Since then, through international relations, the language has been well upkept, and having taken the lead before any other languages, it quickly became popular in many other countries, with places such as Denmark, Switzerland and more picking it up as a main language. Today, English is easily considered the most popular language in the world, with it being understood and spoken at some level in just about every country globally. It is also regarded as the official communication method for business worldwide. Even so, it is far from being a globally common language. As mentioned at the start, with thousands of different cultures, ethnic groups and nations, it is still impossible to be able to communicate with the entire world through one language. Creating a universal language, as much as it has been attempted, to this day still proves impossible. This is where the solution comes in: translations. With bilingual scripts dating back to 3000 BC, translations came about almost as quickly as languages themselves, as it was quickly noted that in order to communicate with others, it was easier to get a translator than learning the language yourself. Translations have always been a vital part in human communications, and have been the backbone of international relations and any cross-country interaction since the dawn of time. Well, almost. If you are ever looking to communicate with another person, business or country in general, you are likely going to need to use the service too. For this, we would point you towards our description, where you will find a link to our translation website where we provide translations, interpretations, proofreading and more. So, although attempts have been made to come up with a universal language, culture and tradition still remain. As Nelson Mandela once said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart. As history proves, nothing will ever beat someone's heritage, and the mother tongue will always prevail. We thank you for watching the video and hope it has informed you, or at least helped you learn something new. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and let us know what we should do next in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to hear from you soon.